Well, happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the FDN Fantastic Friday Call for November 11th, 2016. Brandon Mollet here with you as your host, and excited to have you on with us, guys. Hope you guys had a good week. Things are going well. Gearing up for, the holidays for a lot of people, and hope all that's going well, mixing with your business, having that life-work balance there. So, well, today we have a practitioner spotlight. It's what we're going to be getting into in a few minutes here. I've got an awesome couple coming on to tell you their story, what they're doing with FDN and their business. I think it's going to be very encouraging on the personal story side of things, but also what they've done with their business. And they said for sure they wanted to share some business tips and some things they've learned along the way. So that'll be a big highlight for what we're going to talk about today. Our guests today, excited to have them on. You guys probably heard them before. They're out there quite a bit, different areas, also as far as in the FDN community as well. So today we have on with us the dynamic duo from Arizona. This is Damian and Heather Dube. And I like the last name there. My last name is Mollet. We both have the accent aigu over the E, so I knew how to pronounce their last name. And Heather and Damian, good to have you guys on.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it, too.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, and first, I just wanted to shout out to, obviously, today's Veterans Day, so if there were any veterans or family of vets on the call, I'd like to let them know that we appreciate their service and they're in our prayers.
Thanks for saying that. Totally agree with that sentiment. Exactly. Thank you, guys, gals.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, I think you guys are going to be really encouraged talking to these folks here. They've got an amazing story, especially Heather, that I want to share. Make sure she gets to share of her health journey and what she's been through, but also too with their business. I see some of the statistics of tests that are ran through the medical director program, and these guys run a whole lot of labs, which means they're helping a whole lot of people. So that's really excellent. It's always what we want to be able to do is do the real work of FDN, and part of that is that deep down investigation that we get with the lab work. So, all right, well, guys, thanks for coming on again. And Heather, why don't you maybe start out a little bit kind of how your health journey, I guess that's kind of how you got into this also. Tell us about this. It's pretty amazing, especially if you guys go on the website, see some before and after pics. It's pretty incredible. Both these guys are in incredible shape on the outside, but I also know on the inside they're doing really good too because they know the work they can accomplish. But Heather, why don't you start out with telling us that story?
Yeah, so thank you. It was quite a journey and one we didn't actually expect, but when you can kind of look in hindsight, you could see all the things and the pieces matched up and need to be there and made sense, right, because they put us here with you guys today, so it's awesome, and we're so grateful to be a part of this whole practitioner community offering hope for people in the space of wellness. But so Damian and I were actually newly married, and it had about been 6 months in. I'm sure everyone remembers that period of about 2008, 2009, when which kind of started to go a little funky in 2006. And it was a little challenging times for us professionally. And we had just got married, and we kind of had all that excitement of the newlywed phase, but also the stress of that change. That's a life transition. And unfortunately, one of our parents was dealing with stage 4 cancer pretty shortly after our wedding. We had a lot of things going on in our life. We had just bought a house. We were new homeowners for the first time. I was working a really intense marketing program manager job at an agency. We had, moved and taken these jobs that were, our mortgage was dependent on our salaries, and all these things were happening, and we started to notice shifts in the economy and threats to those kinds of financial stability, and people getting sick in our family. And all of a sudden I started to notice some shifts in my health. We were dealing with a lot. We were dealing with the paperwork of the move. We got audited by the IRS. It was kind of like all these things that the universe kind of brought together in this perfect storm. And leading up to that point in our lives, Damian and I had a background in the area of fitness and natural competitive bodybuilding. We've been blessed with some really amazing mentors in our life. If anyone knows Dr. John Berardi, who's the founder of Precision Nutrition, he's a lifelong friend of Damian's all the way back to the 90s. They were training partners in college, and so they birthed a fascination for changing the human body at the same time and kind of together. And so he's been a source in our life. And so anyway, long story short, I stopped competing. We went into this phase of our wedding, and then all these kinds of things started shifting in the economy and in our world, and my body started speaking to me in a new way that did not make sense, because I was, in my early 30s. I had a long commitment to fitness. It never was a problem for me. If anyone understands Ayurveda, I'm a Pitta, so I love intense weight training typically. That's my jam, and I never had a problem to show up at the gym. All of a sudden, I wasn't motivated anymore for the first time in my life. I felt tired. I felt off. So I started, I just kind of regressed from going to the gym, but then all of a sudden now I was starting to get skin rashes, and I didn't have the right energy. I would come home from work and crash, and I started to go to doctors to try to, what do? You focus on the symptoms, right? Because you don't know. So I started going to all sorts of allopathic doctors at that time when we lived in Northern California. And I was actually working in consumer nutrition marketing in the agriculture industry, because nutrition was always a passion for us. And long story short, doctor after doctor, I don't know after I don't know, steroidal skin cream after steroidal skin cream, finally got to labs after, this was 2 years of going to doctors for different, just trying to figure out what was going on with me. Went to labs, of course, thyroid labs, nothing's wrong with your thyroid, it's in normal range. And unfortunately, over those 2 years of no answers, I descended into what was quite obviously, if you look at my before picture, this internal chaos in my body made its way out into what was at the time, we did not know, full-blown autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's disease. Towards the end, I had pancreatic toxicity, candida systemically, lupus. And I was testing positive for 50% for lupus at that point, and full-blown chronic fatigue syndrome. So as you can imagine, I did not know this at that time. I kind of knew I was in a dangerous place. Being an athlete, you have a high mind-body intuition. And so even though the doctors weren't giving me the answers, I was listening to my inner doctor and the whole time and looking at this experiment of what was happening in my body and measuring in my mind, okay, these flare-ups are getting longer, they're getting louder, so whatever's happening to me is heading to a very dangerous place, which means I need to get as aggressive as what's happening or more if I want to turn it around and create the effect in the direction that I want to go. And so we realized that we had to get really definitive very quickly, or potentially my life was on the line, or I was going to end up in a hospital, and we didn't really have the trust in that community at that point that I wanted to land there. And so we prayed for direction, and at that time I made the decision, I was acknowledging that every form of stress that was coming into my life was my enemy. That was apparent to me, even though I had no idea what I had at that point, or no label. And so I had a very intense marketing job, and I made the decision quite courageously to walk away from that agency because it was going through a buyout. It was a very intense form of stress. Every time I would go into my office, my eyes would swell shut. I would have full-blown eczema on my eyes and my neck. My neck was burning. At this point, my hair is falling out in clumps. So I had to acknowledge that stress was my enemy, number one. And I made the decision to walk away from a salary. That was very comfortable. And to me, at that point, my life was more important, and figuring out what was going on with me than having that stability financially. And I did not even fight my company for disability, because I knew any form of fight was going to aggravate my symptoms. And it was at that point that we started moving into more natural healers or natural practitioners. And I can honestly say that in the beginning we realized that our experience was regionally where we were in Northern California, where you should still have some access to some viable practitioners, is that people were still thinking too finite and too symptom focused and not powerful enough to move the needle with where I was. And so we did what you would naturally do, and I'm sure many of you have patients where you hear this story, is that we cast a wider net. And I jumped on a plane and flew out to somebody that I was told by the grace of God was doing somewhat more comprehensive work. That person at least started me on the path of getting a more clear picture of what my accurate diagnosis was, and adding in forms of detoxification so I could at least turn the corner. I spent some time there, basically a little over a week, doing some work, and then returned back to Northern California, and then spent the next year and a half seeing a local chiropractor while enrolling in Bowman College, who some of you may know, to study their NC program. and found my way out of this cloud over time as I started to make broader decisions holistically about my mind, body, and spirit, and all the forms of stress that were present around me in my environment, in my mental process, as well as what I was putting into and onto my body and exposing my body to, and making better decisions about that to basically make the choice to reverse my disease drug-free. I never went on Synthroid. Then that was a choice from the moment. Actually, one of the first things I actually did was remove any form of drug from my body or synthetic. I had been on the birth control many years, and I decided that I was going to allow my body to do its natural job, and removing that was one of the first things. So it was a year-and-a-half process back, but by 2 years I was back on a national stage competing at the best shape of my life, naturally, against many athletes in the bodybuilding industry that are unfortunately not natural, at the national level competing against athletes from globally different countries around the world, not only having healed that disease, but proven that we can not only reverse these things quite powerfully if we come at ourselves at a more powerful, comprehensive level, but we can actually come above that to a better experience of our human body and our mind and our spirit than we ever experienced before.
Wow, talk about overcomer. That's what comes to my mind hearing your story there. That's amazing. And I think one thing I picked up on there was talking about general health building principles and casting a very wide net versus being so symptom specific and specific treatments.
Yeah.
That's always going to outshine. General is always better than specific in what we do, for sure.
Absolutely. And that was such an important mindset for us, and it really came from our work in athletics. We felt like, wait, we do it comprehensive over here, so why don't we do it comprehensive over here? And so we just started to do a bigger process, and it was huge for us.
So was discipline something that kind of came naturally to you then? So when you said, hey, we're going to make these changes, I'm not going to do any kind of medication, was that just, boom, decision made and you carried on through that, or were there some ups and downs and challenges along the way?
Oh, gosh. I don't think we get any form of, I think disease-free wellness is a form of greatness, without a doubt. This is how we talk to our community. It's a choice of greatness. Great forms of greatness to me are like pursuing our purpose, pursuing drug-free health in today's society, like all these. So any form of greatness, you're going to run into serious. In fact, the larger the form of greatness, you're going to be tasked to go over some pretty big hurdles. And so along the way, I mean, that was such a costly process. You know, we made a commitment to healing drug-free because we wanted to prove that it was possible and be advocates for what the human body is capable of doing for us. And so that was a choice with consequences, right? Because, you know, the errors of these doctors put me in a really bad, life-threatening place. So I had a far way to go. And so, you know, $40-some thousand later, while the economy also bottoms out and my husband's out of work and I'm out of work because I have chronic fatigue and I can't work and I have to be healing and restoring my energy and resting not only my body but my mind, you know, and he loses his job shortly thereafter twice in 2009, we start to realize we're going to lose our house. And, you know, we're looking at each other, what do you do, right? I mean, what do you do? So, you know, we just kept stepping forward because we knew we have a really strong faith, and that's always been a big force in our lives, and we just knew that whatever was going to come at us, we had to be an advocate, because I was getting well at that point. We had to be an advocate of this possibility for others, because most people won't make those choices. Most people won't take those risks, and most people won't have the courage to fly, like, you know, leaping off the cliff, you know, and say, all right, I don't need the net. Let's just do this. And so we did have a lot we had to go through. We ended up going through a personal bankruptcy because of the costs to heal my disease and find our way to heal it over that year and a half. And so it wasn't easy, but it was an important process in making choices to live our lives in a different way, in a way that honors investing in what creates wellness in our life as number one or two, you know, on the budget list, and shifting all of that. So it was a long battle, and then making the commitment that once we realized this was possible, well, now we're going to start a mission, and we made the choice to do our mission debt-free to help other people. So there were definitely a lot of challenges that we went through, and many times we had to make decisions where, for the business, where we didn't even have the money, but we knew we needed to be in this next place to grow our mission, and we just put it forward in faith, and then it showed up. It's just, there's countless examples of that.
Wonderful. I hope you guys are hearing all of what she's saying. She's saying a whole lot, making some huge major points just in the number of sentences there. So make sure you guys replay this a few times. It's wonderful. Now, Damian, I want to hear from you a little bit. So you are along with Heather with this journey, and you're watching your wife's health go down and trying to help her and support her. Where were you in all this? What was your perspective when this was all happening?
Well, I think initially my perspective was that of a husband, right, a man, where it's like we don't understand the challenges that women have, you know. So my solution was, well, go catch a workout and you'll feel better, you know, because I do, you know, kind of like rub some dirt on it type of thing. And it wasn't really until I saw the symptoms start to manifest physically that I said, something's really off, something's wrong, we need to figure this out, you know. And even when you mentioned that we had flown cross-country during a time when the economy was tanking and, you know, she was out of work, so we were on one salary at that point, soon to be no salary. You know, she mentioned that she found somebody she thinks might be able to answer some questions. And she said, well, you know, but we can't afford it. I said, well, you know, we can't not afford it. So just get on the plane and go, you know. And I think that's where there's a lot of disconnect in relationships, especially where a lot of men don't understand, and that's fine. You don't have to understand, you know, but, you know, you did share vows when you got married, and basically it's you know, in goodness, in sickness and in health, right? So at this point, it was in sickness, so I got to support her, and we got to figure this out, and we'll figure everything else out later. At this point, nothing else really matters, you know. So that's one thing that we talk to our clients about, and a lot of women come to us, and a lot of their concern is that their husband isn't going to support them spending the money on fixing themselves, and we'll even get on the phone with their husbands and just explain it more from a male perspective, from a husband's perspective. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that in weeks to come when we launch our new website, because I think that's an important conversation that needs to be made as well, because a lot of women are feeling very hopeless and they're not getting that support from their significant other.
Yeah, Brendan, if I can offer a tip on that for your practitioners, one of the things that we've learned is educating your consumers is so critically important to get them to the answer of yes, to get them to step into that door and be open to a much more potent level of healing. And so the onus is really on us. We get frustrated, right? In the beginning, I got so frustrated in our business because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is possible. We're going to go out there. We're going to change the world. They're going to listen to me, right? You're beating on every drum like, oh, they're going to want exactly what we want. No. And then you find out, no. They think you're a little crazy. They think you're off the charts. They're like, you know, people are in fear around their health. They're very afraid.
And they've been conditioned for generations to think that, you know, healthcare should be paid, and they don't really value this type of thing in a lot of cases.
But what helps them is actually when you provide them resources to educate them, you know, to get them to that decision, right? Because we have to remember, I had a learning lesson in this process. We're 8 years past the story we're sharing with you today, and 8 years into developing our business now, and there's yet so much more to do. And just learning that in the beginning, I think we come out in business and we think everyone's going to want this. And I don't want to be the negative messenger, but you're trying to sell one of the absolute hardest things there is to sell, medication, disease-free health. So the onus is then on us to become better at understanding where the mindset is of this person and how to bridge that gap. And so I had to go back to go forward. And what I mean is I had to remember who I was and what I believed and how I saw my world before this event happened in my life. And I talk to that person now. in the beginning, when you come out in business, you have a tendency to talk to who you are today. Don't talk to that person. Remember who you were before you started all this work, the way you used to think, and create materials that offer conversations that bridge that gap. So one of the things, back to this point, that we're doing now is having Damian create a guide for husbands to educate them on what is your wife going through, because this is not your body. You need to stop seeing it through the eyes of your body. You need to see it through the eyes of her body, to get them engaged in the conversation instead of having them be the block or the enemy to her progress.
Well, I think that's brilliant, because I've seen enough husbands that were non-supportive, and I knew that when I saw that and that husband would not get on board, that's going to be an uphill battle, if not impossible, but an uphill battle if she doesn't have that support. And vice versa. Just you need the support of a spouse or a friend or somebody that's going to come alongside you. And if anything, I guess be neutral, but just don't be against that person. But if you've got support, boy, you're going to get there. You will.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you can come in as the neutralizer, I think in the beginning, too, I used to be like, I would go and defend the woman. I went into that energy of like, oh, this man's in the way. I've got to defend this woman, like, to get her into our program. Instead, I'm now like, you know what? See it with empathy. He's coming from fear typically, too. He's afraid. Men have fears about what their wives are going through. Their reaction is to try to control it, and if they can't control it, they shut down. They don't know what to do.
Oh, we try to fix it.
Fix it, right? And that's what I meant, sorry. And so seeing each side from empathy and opening the door to the conversation as a neutralizer through creating resources that allow them to facilitate that conversation in an automated way. So in the beginning, you'll have to probably do it in a manual way, but when you can build the materials, allow the husband and wife to facilitate that conversation in an automated way that doesn't take your business time. And then we always open the door to allow the husband to join us in our consultations if he feels he needs to be there as part of the decision-making process.
Very wise. There's definitely a psychological aspect to this. We can recommend lots of different changes and dietary changes and supplements and many things to do. But if the support's not there, if we can't get through some of those roadblocks, some of that understanding that needs to be corrected, it can be difficult. So. Very good. That's an awesome resource. I look forward to maybe you can let us know when that comes out. That sounds pretty excellent.
Sure.
Yeah.
So going on from here. Now I know that you guys have a lot of background coming into this with things. Talk about the FDN course a little bit, if you could, and what things you kind of picked up from the FDN course that you've applied to how you work with people today.
Yeah, so actually it's pretty funny. Heather's the one that kind of introduced me to the FDN course. She's the one that initially enrolled, and then while she was starting the business, and then realized that, I'm more the left brain person that's going to kind of do that thing. So she was like, why don't you kind of take over and go through the program? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. But, I think what for me, I've always kind of been one that has not really I haven't really followed the mainstream my entire life. So even when I was a child, I think I was 6 years old, my mother tells a story about how I came home from school one day and I just told her that, they have a cure for cancer, but the government's not letting it out because because of political reasons. So I always knew that there was a different way for some reason intuitively. Through high school and college, I worked in a pharmacy. I saw people coming in every day and on all kinds of medications, and I just thought to myself, this is not right. Something's wrong here. The system's broken. My employer at the time had offered me a full ride to college if I was to become a pharmacist. He would pay for my education. I said, thanks, but no thanks. It's not really the route I'd like to go. So when I was introduced to FDN, it really kind of like sparked my interest, because looking into it, it's about finding the root cause or the underlying cause of people's health problems. So that's really what stuck out to me and what got me really interested in the program. And then going through the program, it was kind of it was interesting to kind of just see how to kind of look at things just differently, and I think the problem a lot of people make is that they try to find the one thing that's going to help, and sometimes there is one thing, sometimes it's a multitude of things that are really going to help change somebody's life. So that's really one of the great things I've taken from the program.
Let's
I don't know
go.
If you have follow-up questions on that.
No, that's good. That's good. It's a lot of the courses, the mindset. It's when you talked about with working with clients. It's a lot about mindset and understanding. It's the principles that you can learn and you lay down and you apply to multiple different situations. That's really a lot of what we teach. Yeah, we teach the nuts and bolts of protocol and interpretation, but I don't know. I have to look at how it's broken up and the hours, the percentage, but I know Reed talks so much about principles. Probably a third of the course is about this is how we work, this is how we think, and that's what gets you there because, we talk about labs may change, things may change, products may change, but you apply the principles and you'll be able to keep on going.
Yeah, and it's funny, you can look at two people's labs and those labs look identical, and one thing might work for one and something completely different might work for the other, and sometimes it is a matter of, well, let's try this. Okay, well, that's not really working. Let's go a different route, We just had, I just had a woman that we just became a member of our community recently that looking at all her labs, her thyroid looked perfect, her adrenals looked perfect, her hormones looked picture perfect, her hormone metabolites looked perfect. She didn't have any intestinal infections really, maybe a little bacteria, but that's about it. Some food sensitivities, but not a whole heck of a lot. But she felt like garbage, So it's like, well, sometimes the labs aren't even necessarily accurate. Sometimes there's something else that's going on. So it's really just about looking out of the box and then correlating that to her symptoms. So sometimes you do have to look at somebody's symptoms and say, okay, maybe I need to look over here now because the labs aren't really giving me anything. So it's just there's no you can't use a cookie cutter approach when it comes to the human body. It just will never work.
Yes, exactly right. Precisely right. That's what we teach. That's the thought process. Everybody's going to be different. You're right. The same stressors on two different people, different manifestations of symptoms, and we run the same basic labs and think a certain way. That's the thing that stays sort of the same, but it's beyond that's where they need us. That's where we need that coach to be able to put the pieces together, to look at the intake forms and their symptoms, how they're presenting, and listen to them, and then take those test results and you mush it all together and come up with your recommendations for that person. And it's a partnership too. I know you guys know that. It's not just you looking at it and telling them. You're asking, you're talking, you're involved. They're telling you some of the answers. All of that comes on that really awesome, fun, dynamic relationship that develops with each of your clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And even just from the initial intake process of the initial consultation where you're talking to them, people are used to going to the doctor and spending 15 minutes with them. They ask them 2 or 3 questions about their symptoms, and then they send them off with a prescription or a surgery. We'll spend an hour and a half to 2 hours with people digging deep into not only where they are today, but maybe where they were 10 years ago or where they were as a child. Maybe there was some type of traumatic experience that they had growing up, whether it was abuse or sexual abuse or the loss of a parent or anything, and all that stuff does manifest, right, and create different types of imbalances within the body. We do a lot with thyroid, so a lot of women especially, their voice is kind of silenced, and then if you think about the chakra system, the 5th chakra, which is right in the throat, is correlated to thyroid health, right? So when women their voices are suppressed, they're not able to really express themselves. And I can assure you, women like to talk. My wife is a prime example of it.
I'm leaving him.
And when you constantly interrupt them, that puts a stress on their vocals, which then manifests into thyroid issues. So we'll even tell our clients, go out and express yourself. I don't care if it's painting or drawing or doing some art or playing a ukulele that Heather just bought, or walking around your house singing, It doesn't matter if your husband appreciates your voice. It doesn't matter, Just they just need to kind of let that out, and that in itself can be helpful.
But those kinds of things tend to come up later, we find. You got to get them past go, and go is always food, right?
Right. Food and mindset.
Nutrients and mindset, usually.
So what, as far as the segment of the population or certain conditions and things, what do you guys typically see? I know you talked about women a lot and thyroid. Is there anything else that you seem to kind of attract and people come to you to dealing with?
So we focus in recovery of thyroid and autoimmune and metabolic balance, so resting metabolism naturally. But we do get quite a few other types of people. Damian, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think that what draws a lot of people to us is everybody kind of wants to lose weight, right? And that's their ultimate goal for whatever reason, to look sexy in a bathing suit kind of thing. So I think that a lot of people come to us because they see kind of how we correct metabolism, right? But at the end of the day, they're really coming to us because they just feel like crap, and they're not getting answers from the doctors. So yes, we do focus on thyroid and metabolic restoration, but thyroid is just another symptom of things going wrong. So we get people that come to us with Lyme disease, with chronic fatigue, with all types of digestive issues, really bad arthritic symptoms, pain, depression, sleep issues, and everything's pretty much all tied together. It doesn't matter what the condition is, for the most part. There are some obviously genetic predispositions that people are gonna have, but again, you can either keep that genetic marker turned off, or you can do things that are going to turn it on, and if you're doing things that are going to turn it on, well, we need to turn it back off. So we really get just a slew of all kinds of different issues with people that are coming to us.
Common thing you hear is, I'm sure you guys, your practitioners share the same, is that I've tried everything. They come in believing they've tried everything, and they're about to basically just give up hope. And usually it's somebody who's been working with different forms of natural practitioners, from functional medicine doctors to naturopathic doctors to nutritionists, all of the above, and they still have not found a resolve. They may have been lab tested, they may have not. We've had people come in with a folder of labs that would just blow your mind, and we're starting at ground zero. And then we've had people that have had no labs at all. But typically there's somebody that has some skin in the game, we like to say, already, in investing their time, energy, and money in supplements. They're in their life. They're not doing any supplements at all. They have some acumen around nutrition. So maybe they're doing a whole foods profile, or they've tried AIP, like they've tried paleo. Maybe they've tried one or a few of those, and they're still not seeing the progress that they need. They may or may not have a thyroid issue. They may have been diagnosed. They may not have been diagnosed, but suspect they do. And usually their weight is a symptom, but it's not the priority. So they're shifted into a place of, like, maybe they're going to see a doctor and the doctor isn't really giving them an answer on the weight when they bring it up as a problem, because typically that isn't in the education or the background of, body transformation in most doctors' education. And so they are considering that a symptom, and they want traction with that symptom, in addition to feeling normal again and being able to think normal again and function and be productive and be healthy. So usually that's the kind of person. And I would just answer that question not as a practitioner but as a business owner now, and say it's so super important to understand who you are passionate about serving and choose that person and put it out to the universe very clearly. Because I can tell you, as someone in branding and marketing before, if you do not do this, they will have no idea who you serve, and you will not draw people to you. So even, I think a common thing we hear with business owners is they're afraid, well, I can do this. And the thing is, we need to pick the one thing that really sits on our heart, that like we're passionate about serving in. And usually that's you. It's like if you went through something personally, it's you. That's your gift to give to the world. It's your truth. So if you focus there and you focus clearly in your languaging, in your conversation, they will resonate with you at a heart level, and you will draw those people to you, and you won't lose the people that you're not talking to, because they say you stand for something or you fall for everything, right? Like, you have to be very clear on what you stand for in this world and put it out there without fear and courage of, don't worry about judgment. There's always going to be people that you want, the people that don't resonate with you to go away. You do. You actually want them to go away, because it's going to be a futile effort trying to connect with them.
So you do find yourself turning people away then after the initial conversation? Does that happen often?
We're getting better. I mean, it's 8 years now.
I think initially we thought we could help everybody, and we tried to help everybody, and then we found that there are some people that
it's not a good fit.
It's just not a good
for the work.
for this type of work and this type of investment, and it ended up being a real stress on us trying to help people that are not ready for this type of help.
And if you're talking about business, I'm sure you know too, Brandon, it's like there's realistic, if we're having a realistic conversation, there's realistic financial issues in business. In the beginning, you have to take everyone that comes to you. You have to, because you have to get to a certain point in your business where you can get stable financially in your revenue model. But and you can't be in that constant up and down. But when you get closer to it, you should be using that opportunity to refine your vetting process of who comes to you and asking the right questions to get very clear. Because everyone will see the shiny metal ball and say, I want that. But most people, if we're having an honest conversation, they want that, but do they want the work of that? And that's the real question that's up to us to figure out through the process of the, intake forms that we create when we're vetting who's coming to us, saying, oh yeah, I see your case studies, I want that. Because you don't want to get into situations, we've learned the hard way, and a lot of business, you learn through businesses, like when you take the ones where you're just like everything in your body is telling you no, you will always regret it. You will always be like, this ends up being a not good fit, or you part ways, or it's a futile effort, or they don't show up. So we just look at it because we're all energy practitioners, right? Like, it's got to be an equal exchange of energy. We will absolutely go to the ends of the earth for you to teach you and uplift you in your human body experience if you at least come to a certain percent and match us in our energies. But we will not invest our time, which is priceless anymore, or our energy into somebody who's going to show up 10% or, you know what I mean? Like, their words are incongruent with their actions, because that's an energy issue. And I promise you there will be a place, if you're earlier on in your business cycle, where you get to this place that you get stronger at this. And when you get stronger at your boundaries and you communicate to the world who is deserving of your time, and I mean that in the humblest way, but who is deserving of your time and your experience and all you've invested to get to where you are today, you will be telling the universe who should be coming to you in those boundaries. And so in the beginning, we did a lot of fear as business owners. I felt it too, and it took us a while to get to a place where we charged where we felt we were worth and stood in that, but also develop processes where when we're looking at somebody, we consider it an enrollment process. We don't take everybody that comes to us for a consultation into our program anymore, because we know if they're just too early on in their journey, or they're saying they want it, but you don't see it in their actions, or they don't have all the pieces of what is a good fit or what they call your avatar, then you need to invite them into some lower level opportunity to grow before investing your the gift of your time and your mentoring into them. Does that make sense?
It does. I agree with that. We talk about that often with trainees going through the course there, that, yeah, you have to set some boundaries. And we've all been guilty of this. I know I did that too. There's people that I should not have taken on, and you're right. It was just a big headache, and nobody won, and nobody really benefited. But one thing I did like that you said, you have something to give them. If they're not ready for that full program, you have something to offer them at least, so they don't walk away just empty-handed. You got something.
Yeah.
Is that more like a smaller program, or what does that look like?
Like maybe you have if you're early on and you don't have a lot of resources to create something, because if we're being honest, copywriters, designers, all these things are really expensive, sales pages, like all that stuff. So maybe you just have a Facebook group, create a free Facebook group and start opening the conversation. Obviously, you don't want to create something that's going to create a lot of extra work for you. It's so hard. Honestly, starting a business is the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's so worth it when you start to affect people's lives positively. And they need all of us. There's so many people who are sick. They need all of us, like really being worth going through that process. And but you know, maybe you do a Facebook group. Maybe you create like an ebook. Maybe you just record 5. Like, okay, if we're like I'm such a perfectionist, so it's really taken me a long time to get out of this, and that's part of what contributed to my dis-ease. So it's really had to relearn that mindset a little bit. That 80% is usually enough to get it out there. The 100% that you're waiting on, that's hiding, is not doing anything for the world when it's sitting on your laptop. Like, if it get it to 80% and then get it out and then go to create the next thing, because people need all the nuggets, all the help they can get. So maybe it's just an ebook. Maybe you just record yourself doing, you know, a 10-minute video in 5 series, and you automate it through MailChimp or an autoresponder, and they get to hear you talking. Talking, I've found, is so critical in what we all do, because it's so hard for people to understand what we do and why it's different. And we're even just getting into some of that now. We haven't even done a lot. I don't mean talking like on, yes, to market your business. It's talking on podcasts and interviews and all these things important. But I mean creating materials where you talk on video, critically important. You will see such a difference when you do that, to explain what you do. They can see you. They can know, like, and trust you. They get your energy. They can look in your eyes. Those things are all different than reading someone's words. So, you know, just doing something like that, it's even a low-level thing. Maybe you make it free. Maybe you make it low cost. You know, just in the beginning, make it about giving, too, because you'll reap what you sow. It will come back to you eventually tenfold. So, like, we do have to give, too, and be willing in the beginning not to be like, if you create some lower-level thing that just gives them the experience. Remember that as a business owner, instead of looking at that as, well, that's my time, I should charge, in the beginning, your leads on your list are the most important thing, and cultivating those relationships, because the life cycle of the type of client we're trying to reach, you'll find people watch you for 1 to 2 years and then they'll come in and be like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to work with you. Like, so that's a long life cycle of a client. So what can you do to nurture that right quickly and over time? And it's worth your free time if you retain that lead and you convert them at some point.
Told you guys it was going to be a good call. I hope you guys are taking notes. If not, then you listen to the replay and take notes. Heather and Damian are laying down some really wonderful principles and things totally need to abide by when you're talking about business. They've been there, done that, made the mistakes, found out what works. Awesome stuff. So, guys, just continue in this vein. We've got about 15 more minutes in the show, so I love the business side of things. So if you guys want to throw out some more things as far as maybe tips or things you learned not to do, go for it.
Oh my gosh, can we have about 10 more calls?
Yeah, a part 2.
Yeah, come on next week. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I don't say that in a scary way, but I think it's kind of, everybody comes into business different. Some people do it because it's like something that they were always gifted at. Some people do it because they go through something transformational in their life and they want to help other people. For some, it's both of those, right? And for us, it was both. But it's kind of like pregnancy, because like nobody talks about it. You don't want to talk about what happens behind the scenes, because it's like, I'm glad I didn't know, because I don't know, who knows, we wouldn't maybe I'll be talking to you today, right? What's all involved. But what I will say, and I know we shared this with you too before the call, is honestly, it's like one of the most rewarding things you can ever do when you're. I'm sure you have people on the call that like you get your gratitude notes, you're changing lives. People are so thankful. I think one of the things that's so hard is like starting a business, you're so focused in the day-to-day, like you're behind your laptop, you're with your clients, you're doing all the minutia, right? But maybe put a pause in your practice, your personal practice, not like your clinic practice, of remembering to, like if you don't get out to speaking events, if you don't get out into the community a lot, we have an all online business, so that's kind of our model. We're not actually face-to-face a lot with our clients unless we're via Skype. But even in bigger groups of the person you're trying to touch and serve, it's very easy to forget how much they're struggling. It's very easy to forget when you're opening your fridge every day in your closets and you have like a bountiful plethora of awesome supplements and great food, that the average person is really in pain and struggling emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually struggling. And so it's good sometimes to create ways where you can keep connected with those people, even if it's in a free way. We're still working on that stuff now, because it reminds you why you're here and why the work matters and why if you need to go through a 3, 4, 5 a.m. morning once in a while, there's people that need you doing it. They need you doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So just remembering those kinds of things. Damian has something he wanted to chime in on business.
Yeah, I think another really big one is don't work for free.
Yeah, totally.
You know, in my experience, in both of our experience, it's not valued and never will be valued, and will seldomly be followed. So, you know, begin to see your time as your most valuable possession, because really all we have is our time, you know. And when you start to charge what you're worth, then people that are willing to invest in it will start to kind of flock to you.
I think an add-on to that I would say is, what he's saying is when someone emails you and says, what do I do for this? Or they like contact you on Facebook, well, tell me what to do. Like, you don't knee-jerk into, here, one, you shouldn't legally. That was the thing. You just kind of say, like, I cannot legally advise you, unfortunately, and you should be wary of anyone that would, really, ultimately, because for your safety, it's, you know. But here's a gift that I would like you to have, to go take a look, to start to learn more of some tips that you could do. You push them to your free gift. So you don't kind of make the conversation about, why are you asking me for free information? Because even though they shouldn't be asking you for free information, you want to bridge. You're always trying to bridge the gap to the next step, get them to the next nugget on the squirrel trail, right? And so they need to trust you, and to trust you, they need to feel like you're not just about money, and that you actually want to help. And so to point them towards your free gift, give them the opportunity to go opt in for your free gift and start to connect with you on your newsletter. So there has to be that second step. Another point, Brendan, go ahead.
I was going to sound like the difference between, you know, giving out content and let them know who you are, and free gifts and those things, versus getting involved in these long emails back and forth where you write, you know, 10 pages about them. That's taking up a lot of time, and really, like I said, not very effective either. Ultimately, is what it comes down to.
No, we have template emails that we built. Standard operating procedures are one of the best things you can ever do for your business. And what I mean by that is having, like, ways that certain things are always done. And so we have templates that we've built, and honestly, you can say in your mind, like, oh, this is going to take forever. It really actually in the end doesn't take that long. Once you type something once and you respond we have like a Facebook template email that once we got to having a VA, I said, log into my account, and when you see leads come into my account and they're asking for help, you send them this email and it directs them to that gift. And so, you know, she says, I'm their assistant, here's their information, you know, we would love for you to have this gift, and that kind of thing. You're just kind of building systems, so you're not investing your time all the time. You have to focus on systems and automation in the beginning phase of your business.
And another trick too is even, you know, so if your time is worth, let's say, $100 an hour, and you can hire out tasks that you can pay somebody $10 an hour, right? Then that's a win, right? So don't be afraid to hire these things out. You know, hire yourself a part-time admin that can address some of these emails and so on and so forth. And you know, if you struggle, you know, financially to hire somebody, then make up a person's name and use that to respond to people, right? Because then you don't have to get in these conversations with people. You can have a quote-unquote admin respond to these people asking all types of questions. Which kind of leaves you out of it, and the admin can just say, you know, I'm not a clinician, but, you know, here's where I recommend you go, and you know, go to our free gift, so on and so forth, like Heather was saying.
I think to just touching on that point of systems and automation again too, one of the hugest learning lessons for me is not only when we were going through all this trial, like of I was sick, I'm in chronic fatigue, his dad gets stage 4 cancer, we lose him 6 months after our wedding, he's out of work, I'm out of work, we're losing our house. Then we get a call, we're packing up our house in California to move to Arizona, thinking, you know, all right, well, Damian could go find work there, because at this time he still wasn't doing this work. And I get a call that my stepdad passed in his sleep. He was in year 5 of his startup of building one of the most successful commercial solar companies globally, and he passed from the effects of the stress, and the doctors just kind of threw him on medication. I did not see his pictures, and by God, if I saw his pictures in those last 3 months, I would have gotten my butt on a plane and run screaming, like he had massive inflammation. you could just see the disease process had really just because it never goes on this straight downward trajectory. At the end, you kind of go quickly, right? So anyway, my point being, he lost everything he worked for. He lost everything he worked for because he did not do one thing: systems and automation. From the day one you start your company, if I could not give you one more, the most massive piece of wisdom I could give you is document, 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 and create your processes so that the day you have to walk out, the day, God forbid, something happens, the day you need to take a month off because your parent now needs care and they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, your baby that you've created can still exist and continue relatively well without you. Or you can potentially, everything you've sacrificed for, everything you've invested in can be gone, right? So we have to think about our business as an asset, because that's what it is. And your asset is your knowledge, it's your IP. And so all of your processes, that's your value. When you actually go get your business evaluated from a financial perspective, that they look at that. They're like, how many processes do you have in place? What are they? Are your contract processes automated? Are your legal processes on? All these things. So start now, because it's just like putting holes in the boat, and the more you do it regularly, the easier it gets, and you can start to see more of the light at the end of the tunnel. It's one of the biggest things I could tell you, because God forbid everything you do, something happens. There's no guarantees in life, right? So you want to protect your creation, and systems and automation is a big part of that, so that your whole process is documented and your company is documented and can run fairly effectively with or without you at some point. Obviously not on day one, but as you grow.
Right. Yeah. And the point is, start now. Don't get partway through this. Don't have those things set up. Even if it's just a few documents here and there, a few procedures you've written up, at least you're starting. It will just build and build and build.
Yeah. And I have three others I think that are important too. I want to kind of touch on real quickly. One is, don't be afraid to build your colleague community. What I mean by that is, surround yourself with other people that are doing similar work, that you can maybe share their stuff, they can share some of your stuff, because we're all in this together. And we all really need to kind of support each other in order to get our mission moving forward. Another tip is, don't be afraid to invest in your business. I think that sometimes we're afraid to take risks, but if you're taking educated risks, that's where you get the biggest reward. And we've done that quite a bit, where we're like, well, can we afford this or not? It's like, what, we'll figure it out.
So
let's just do it.
This being like, someone's going to call us after the call and be like, you told me to take risks. That would be bad. No, but I think that comes back to the point at the top of the call that you had asked, Brendan, and we were kind of talking about. If I could, an overriding theme for Damian and me through this whole process is faith. Without a doubt, number one is faith. If you know you're supposed to be somewhere, if you know you're supposed to do something, it's not always going to, we wait in fear energy. We wait for the guarantee. We wait to know that it's going to work out perfect. Well, all you're doing is communicating that you need to control the process. And I can promise you, whatever you believe in your spiritual practice, there is another force that is part of all of this. And when you put yourself out there in a way with courage and say, I'm letting go, and I'm going to trust that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to invest big in this thing. That's how we made massive leaps in healing my disease. That's how we made massive leaps in growing our mission in very short amount of time, to where we are in our business. We still have more growth to do, but you're always growing, right? You're always growing. Yeah, it's just that faith of, you can't wait all the time and expect it's going to work. Because if you stay in fear, your path is going to be so much longer than if you you grow a pair and you're like, this is what I'm meant to do. I know it in every cell of my being, and you go for it, and you invest in your business in bigger ways, and you take those risks.
If you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, it's probably not going to work. But if God gave us all a gift, and if your gift is healing people, then it's your duty to use that gift to serve others.
And to grow it, and to continually grow it.
Right. And if you make that your mission, then you will be rewarded for it. We see it over and over again.
Yes, I agree. Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. We're down to the last.
And then further your education.
Well, that's part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Further education. Right.
Yeah.
Keep learning. Don't be afraid
Keep
to
learning.
stick with the foundations and the principles, but keep learning.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good. Like I said, we're down to about the last minute or so of the show. I want to make sure you guys check out the article there on the FDN community, a little bit about but also, guys, at the end here, just go ahead and give your website there so people know they can check out and kind of see. You guys talked a lot about how you're running your business. Have them check out your website so they can see kind of the on the outside what it looks like, that process looks like. So what's your guys' website?
It's E3 Energy Evolved, so E and the number 3, and then the word energy and evolved, past tense with a D on it at the end of it, .com. And if you're on a mobile device, I'll just let you know now that our mobile app only shows you our blog feed. We're actually moving to a new website likely this month, so we'll have a better process. But if you're looking at it on a desktop, you'll have a different experience. So.
There you go, the continuous improvement process and going and changing things. So awesome.
And if you do check it today, I would say check back in a month because it's going to be different.
Okay, that's cool. That's an awesome thing. Well, we will. So, a few seconds left here, but I want to thank you guys for coming on. You guys just laid down so much awesome truth and advice, and I'm feeling good after this call. It really energized me and encouraged me, and hopefully you guys out there listening too, if you're listening live or you've got the replay here, it's a good one. Get your paper and pencil out and take some. They've lived it and they've done it, and appreciate you guys coming on again.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. We appreciate it too.
Yeah, anytime we can help, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being on with us, and guys, have a great weekend. Again, happy Veterans Day. Appreciate everybody for your service. Talk to you guys next week.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.